to episode 2 of series 4, aka my genealogy YouTuber series. So tonight I have a genealogy YouTuber, although everyone in the series is YouTubers, so not sure if I need to keep reminding people of that, but anyway, I'll say it anyway. Tonight I have Auntie Jen's Family Trees, the host of that, and Auntie Jen Rickards.
Hi.
Hi Jen, how are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there trying to recover from a cold, but otherwise doing fairly well.
Ah, well, that's good. So I think we may as well get into it.
Okay.
For those that might necessarily know you, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jen Rickards, and as you said, I have my own little thing called Auntie Jen's Family Trees. I've been an amateur genealogist and family historian since about 2012. And I'm trying to turn that into more of a career now because I love it so much. I can't get enough of it. So I might as well, turn it into something that I can do as, for my future. And I'm a blogger as well as a YouTuber, as you mentioned. I haven't really developed my YouTube very far yet. I'm still trying to learn and get into it, but I'm having a great time with it. Like I said, I have a blog as well that I tell stories about my family and share tips as well. I'm also an administrator of a couple of genealogy Facebook groups, the main one called Genealogy Addicts Anonymous, also known as GAA. Although we're not really anonymous, and we do tend to kind of support people in this addiction, but but yeah, so that's pretty much me.
Right. And actually, when you said GAA, that actually means something completely different in Ireland. It's actually the name of a
Yes, it
sport,
does. Yes.
Gaelic Athletic Association.
Yes.
Um, so, yeah, so depending on where you're from, it can mean something different.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
What got you into genealogy? What started it all off?
Well, gosh, the funny thing is growing up, I hated history. I couldn't stand it, especially in school. Well, the teachers, they just never made it interesting for me. Well, I've always been a big fan of photographs, and my grandma knew that. So back when she was still alive, back in 2012, she had a couple of old boxes of photos. They were just thrown in, not taken care of. And she was like, well, nobody else in the family wants them. Would you like them? It's like, oh gosh, yeah, you don't even have to ask, hand them over. And so I'm sitting there just looking through these things, and they weren't named, so I don't know who any of these people are. Some of them had dates going back all the way to the 1900s, and it's like, gosh, these are amazing. I want to know who these people are. And my grandma could tell me some things, but dementia was starting to set in, and
Yeah.
she couldn't remember a whole lot. And it's like, well, let me see what I can do with this. And also with the boxes of photos was a little date book, and it had written originally in German some of the family history. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't read this. Well, it was translated later on in the book by someone, I'm not really sure who, but it had birth dates, death dates, marriage dates, when they came over from Germany. And I was just blown away. It's like, oh my gosh, well, we need to set this up and figure out who these people are. And so I decided just to create a tree on Ancestry to start, plugging these names in, see where it can take me. And as soon as I started getting those records, I was hooked. I couldn't stop after that. Just seeing my grandma's name on a census record and my Uncle Jerry, I was like, holy cow, this is really neat. And I just kept going and I couldn't stop. My dad would ask me, he's like, when are you going to stop? I said, never, never. I keep finding more. I'm just always interested. So that's really how I got started.
I can tell you're enthusiastic just by the
Oh my gosh, yes.
and I think there's a kind of question to do kind of interesting bits that I know kind of one recent that you discovered, which I'm sure might be the one that you pick. But
Well,
we'll
that's one of them, yeah.
yeah, we'll say that for later.
Okay.
What resources have you found most helpful in research?
A couple of things. I think the first one is really people. Talking with so many different people, to help me along with learning and giving me information. We underestimate really the help that we can get from people all the time, talking to them. Like I said, I'm in many Facebook groups, and they have been able to look up records for me in other states and, give me help wherever I couldn't have traveled. And even other people in other Facebook groups that are from other countries, they've guided me to different databases online, and I've been able to trace my family back into the 1700s in Germany because of their help. So people are such an invaluable resource for me. Absolutely. And then going along with that, online databases have been an amazing resource because we can't always travel. We can't always go to the places we want to. Like I said, I've traced my family back to the 1700s in Germany. I haven't been able to take a trip to Germany, and I probably don't know when I would be able to do so. So having those records online on databases has really just been so great with me tracing my family tree.
No, I do agree, because I mean, like, there are some like graves I would love to see. Like, I have a grandaunt who's buried in Brooklyn. I had to think there.
Oh, wow.
And obviously, me being over in Ireland, I can't really go. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there was a thankfully a kind volunteer in Find a Grave actually photographed the headstone, and
Oh,
I
that's
think it was
wonderful.
actually a Family History Society, I think, had done it. Like, they have a
Oh,
Find a
wow.
Grave account, and they had done, I think it was a society, I'm probably wrong, but kind of they just like had all the kind of, they did one, I think it was the Calvary Cemetery
Oh,
in New
wow.
York, so, which is quite big. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've got one of those out here in St. Louis too. It's absolutely huge. I haven't ventured into that one yet. I'm a little scared.
yeah, you might need GPS for that, just to try and get out. It sounds big, so
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't hurt anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine if you had been asked to like find a grave, and they were kind of saying, right, and where is it? And you spent the
Exactly.
whole day looking for it, and you still probably wouldn't find it.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, obviously, there are some bits that I obviously know about. Obviously, you're a blogger and you do
Yeah.
YouTube as well. So, is there any like projects or ventures that you're currently pursuing at the moment?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to develop my YouTube channel a little bit more. I kind of been off of it a little bit this past year because of my dad passing away. I, haven't felt up to really making a whole lot of videos. You know how that is. So I'm taking the time to plan and get some ideas in my head. And so I've got some more ideas. I want to make some more family history crafts for YouTube videos because I'm also part of another group that talks about all of that, and we want to display our family history in some way. So I'm coming up with all these ideas on what we can do to display the things that we've gotten from family or we've collected and such. I'm also working on a couple other channels. I'm still in the development stages of those, so I don't want to talk about them yet until I actually get some idea of what I'm doing with those. But I really want to work on my YouTube channel. I'm also wanting to, like I said in the beginning, I want to turn this into a career. So I still have a lot to learn. I'm still, an amateur in all of this. I remember going to one of the family history conferences out here in St. Louis, talking to a genealogist. And I said, yeah, I've been doing genealogy, I guess, for about 8 years. And she's like, oh, you're just a baby, honey. It's like, yeah, I can imagine if you've been doing genealogy for about 50 years. Yeah, I'm just a baby. So
Yeah.
I still want to, learn more. And I really want to develop, I guess, my niche, what would be my specialty,
Yeah.
and help with that so I could really turn that into a career. I've been doing family trees for my friends to really just get some experience, and
Yeah.
I love doing the research anyways. I feel like a detective, so it keeps me busy.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm also helping out our local historical society, trying to get more membership in. They're getting ready to move to a new building because unfortunately the building they've had for years has been sold. So they're going to have to move to a different one, get all set up and everything. So I'm trying to help them
Yeah.
get some more people in, get more membership. And then, of course, the biggest thing, like I mentioned, my dad passed away. So I'm processing his estate, which includes a lot of paperwork. My dad never threw away anything. So I've got papers going back into like the 50s and 60s and 70s.
Right.
And I'm trying to, keep some things, get rid of some things. And
Hmm.
yeah, my office is quickly filling up with boxes. So that's also a big thing that's keeping me busy.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound busy with all the work that you're doing. So, I mean, I can understand if you're a little bit overloaded.
Well, and that's just genealogy stuff. I mean, regular
Yeah,
family stuff. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I homeschool my child. She's 17, and then of course, taking care of things at home, taking care of my mom and other things. So yeah, I keep pretty busy.
yeah, I can imagine. So, is there anything that you now know that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh gosh, I wish I would have written down a lot more and cited my sources properly. Because in the beginning you think, oh, I don't need to write that down, I'll remember that. Or, oh, I don't need to write that down, it's over here, I'll remember where to find this. No, no, I don't know how many times I've had to go back and try to re-find sources that I hadn't looked at in like 5 years, and it's like, oh my gosh, where was this? I can't remember, and here I am having to do the work all over again. So,
Mm,
just at least writing and sourcing correctly is the big thing.
yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, I'm always trying to think, where did I find that again? Or because
Yes.
as there was like one, it was like a great granduncle of mine, and we all know mistranscriptions do happen, and sometimes they can be wildly inaccurate. And then there are some that,
Oh gosh, yeah.
and then there are some that kind of look that when you kind of look at the actual image, you can kind of think, oh yeah, I kind of see where they were getting that.
Yeah.
So it was his name was Thomas Loftus, so obviously Loftus, and
Yeah.
he was recorded as, so it was
Oh.
Lefthus, and I knew it was something like that, and I could never figure out what it was recorded as. So like I saved the document, and I'm glad I did because I couldn't find it until like I tried about 5 different combinations, and then finally remembered which one was the one that brought that one up. But like, yeah, I mean, there was one that I was gonna write to do with like the sobering side of family history, and it was to do with like
Yeah.
unidentified people who
Mhm.
because I while researching a friend's tree, there was a kind of, I was looking at a death cert or something, and it was like 1877, and the
Wow.
death cert, so like there was an entry that kind of said death an unknown man, um age, no, obviously don't know, male,
Yeah.
and so like cause of death found, so like found drowned on Tremor
Oh
Strand,
my
basically
god.
found dead on a beach.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, Tremor Strand is like a beach coastline
Yeah.
on the south of Waterford. And it was like, oh my god. And like we all joke about, and I'm sure the 5 people who are currently watching will be able to reiterate this. But you probably kind of joke. We all joke around, that, oh, we have our vampire ancestors or we have our zombie ancestors. This is essentially one of them because
Yeah.
probably this person will never be known. And like
Yeah.
it's listed as an unknown man, not an unknown baby or child or whatever.
Yeah.
And like it's one person whose identity is sadly lost to time, because unlike the DNA Doe projects and all the
Mhm.
projects kind of use DNA testing to try and like figure out who these people were,
Yeah.
like that's still fairly new technology. So I
It
mean,
is.
so obviously it wasn't back in 1877, 140 or
No, yeah.
140 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So we sadly, excuse me, we sadly wouldn't be fortunate enough with that as it was then. Comment came in about, obviously, with the kind of regarding the education side of things that you were saying. Have you
Yeah.
considered programs such as Boston University? I just did the certificate program.
Oh, that's really neat. Congratulations. I'm still looking, still trying to figure out which direction I want to go with it, taking my options and seeing what I can do. But that's a good idea. Thank you for the suggestion.
So, right. So, what aspect? I think I know what one you'll say, but I could be wrong. What aspect of genealogy do you love the most? So, like finding people in records, stories, photos,
Well,
newspapers.
obviously I love photos.
Yeah.
I love going through. I've always been a big photo person, even since I was younger. My friends would always tease me because I always had a camera in my face, taking pictures. And I literally stapled photos to my walls when I was younger. Oh my gosh, my parents wanted to kill me for that. But so photos obviously are the big thing. That I love finding photos of ancestors that I've never seen before. When I got a photo of my husband's second great grandfather, Joseph Henry Rickards, I screamed. I was so excited because I never thought we'd find a picture of him. And here I was looking at it, and he comes in the room and he's like, what? And it's like, oh, no, it's okay. It's good news. Look what I found. And he's like, oh, okay. But yeah, photos is the big thing there. The next thing is I love holding the original certificates, documents, any papers that were held by our ancestors. That to me is a form of traveling through time. That literally you're holding something that hasn't been touched by them for like 100 years. I went to the National Archives to look up information on my second great uncle when I was researching him, and they had his burial case file because he died in World War I. And I'm looking at the papers that my second great grandma, his mom, signed. She filled it out and signed, and it's the original papers. And I'm afraid to touch them because I'm afraid they're just going to fall apart in my hands, But to me, it just felt like I'd stepped back in time and that she was just right there, with this paper in her hand. And to me, that is just the most exciting part. That brings history to life to me,
Yeah. No, and I do agree with the fact that, like holding history in your hands, essentially. Like it's one of the few things I actually have, the physical thing in my family, and it's a coin that had my what you call it, my great grandfather Max Whelan and his wife Catherine, had like engraved their names in Irish, so Pádraig O'Arachar and or August, is that the word Irish, and Courtney Arachar, which is called Frahar in or Catherine Frahar. God, I'm getting Irish and English mixed up now. Catherine Frahar, and it gave the kind of their date marriage, so 14th of January 1921, and kind of it was then passed to my grandmother, and when she died in 1994, it was then passed down to my mother, and kind of she has it kind of now. So it is something that they would have held at some point in their life, which I thought was crazy.
Awesome.
And it's weird because it's one of the few things that we actually have that actually survived the test of time. And go back to your point on kind of getting excited over photos. I mean, genealogists get excited over completely different things, or even more things compared to normal people.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Nina just said there, saying thanks. I'm doing ProGen now. So
oh, wonderful.
So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to do kind of course in a college called UCC.
Okay.
But it's on the kind of name of it is History of the Family. But the annoying thing is you have to be 21 to do the course. I know, and I'm only
history has no age. Come on, people. People want to learn stuff from a young age. Come on.
College does. No. But no, I mean, I'm probably going to do something in history anyway. So there's that, and then obviously when that's done, I'll probably be 21 or thereabouts, and then I'll be able to do the course. So then it's all good. But I relating to courses, I had sat in on, or not sat in on what I'm saying. Like I joined in on Claire Bradley's Irish Genealogy 101 course, which I
Okay.
quite enjoyed. It was a nice overview of Irish research. So CB Genealogy on Twitter if you want to see
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And mainly for anyone who wants to kind of look into their Irish research. My Irish my words are all buggered now. My my heritage is all Irish, and if I
Yeah.
had to talk like this for the whole stream, it's going to be irritating.
No, it's all
uh,
good. Yeah.
so like my whole heritage is Irish. Like I cannot find any like sneaky one who came from like Wales or something or Scotland or England or not. It's just
You never
nothing.
know. You never
No,
know.
they didn't move. Nobody moved, and
That's kind of the way it is with my family out here in the United States in Missouri. Majority of my family is in St. Louis and around the surrounding area. So a lot of my research has been great here, which is
yeah,
good. But I do have Irish roots. I have not been able to get them back to Ireland yet. The last I have is finding him in New York, and from there I can't make the connection back to Ireland. And he's got a basic name like Harry Hill. And it's like that
Hill.
is yeah, and that's what doesn't make sense. Hill doesn't seem like an Irish name, but his parents are full-blooded Irish. He's full-blooded Irish, but he was born in New York. But his parents
Right.
came over. I just don't know when. I can't find them. I can't find, when they came over, nothing yet. So
Yeah, and actually thinking about, because like you said, you wouldn't think Hill is kind of like a typical
yeah.
Irish name, but
No.
Gerald Clark, a friend of mine who's also in the Hidden Branch, actually did a post kind of talking about, Irish surnames and all that. And like
Yeah.
an example that he used was kind of Cunningham. And kind of he was kind of saying, you never thought that could possibly be Irish, but so like it was that I don't want to pronounce it in Irish because I can't think of it off the top of my head. And if I did, like my Irish isn't too bad, but I don't want to come across as some guy who doesn't know what he's saying if I
Yeah.
tried pronouncing it, so I won't. And also for the people who don't need to hear butchered Irish. So I mean, like you could be surprised because like you might kind of think, oh well, Hill isn't an Irish name, but then you might discover it is. And it
Yeah.
probably usually it is. Like you'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Seeing as
Yeah.
most names seem to be Irish. When I'm like when I kind of research in other friends' sheets, I kind of go, well, that's clearly not Irish, and then I kind of it is. Yeah. So it's just that. So now we get to the fun part. What's an interesting
Okay.
story or event that you discovered about your ancestors?
Well,
And
yeah,
you can
you
do as
saw
many
me
as you
share
want.
the
But obviously
Oh
don't
gosh,
take them to
I was to
don't
say, yeah, you
don't
don't want to tell me that because I've got a ton of them. But yeah, you saw the most recent one of
yeah.
my second great grandma, Oma. Um, she was adopted, and I had no clue that she was adopted. I originally found the divorce record of my third great grandma from her first husband, and it stated in that divorce record that this is not her blood child, but she wants to have custody of this child. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Nobody knew this. I mean, nobody. It was never written anywhere that, that was not her blood child. Well, I assumed then that it was the blood child of her first husband. Oh, I was wrong because I found the adoption record now in the court records that state that both my third great grandma and her first husband adopted this baby when she was just a few months old from the Bedford County, Tennessee asylum. And they wanted to take her in. She had no parents. The parents apparently had died, and they actually named her original name too. I couldn't believe that. So I might be able to trace back my second great grandma's birth family in Bedford County if I, if I'm able to. But yeah, her adopted name was Oma Mae Dennis. And they kept her first and middle name, and they just changed her last name because her birth name was Oma May Collins. So
Right.
I was
Collins is
I was
definitely
just blown
Irish.
away. I I
I
was
could tell you
just
that
blown away
straight
by
away.
that. Yeah, so that's my most recent biggest find that I couldn't believe it. But then it connects into my third great grandma, where that she has been my brick wall ever since I started my research in 2012. I found a ton of information about her in St. Louis, but going back to her life in Tennessee, oh, that's just a mess because she lied about her age and she tried hiding the fact that she had, I guess, got married and then tried to scam the first husband. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out. The records state that he married her and then he left the next day. And so she's trying to sue him for property. And he's like, hey, whoa, hold up. I was too drunk. I don't remember a marriage. I don't think this marriage is real. I think she's just a prostitute looking for money. And it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder she didn't talk about any of this stuff. So I cannot find really a lot on her in Tennessee because I think she lied and tried to hide her life there. So yeah, she's definitely been an interesting one to research. But I think one more I'll tell you is on my husband's side. He's got a lot of interesting stuff, but the biggest thing that was a shocker to me, and I was actually interviewed on Extreme Genes for this one. My husband's second great grandfather, Joseph Henry Rickards, is the only man to ever arrest Jesse James. Now, do you know who Jesse James is? He was the main outlaw in the United States. Him and his brother Frank James, they went around robbing banks and killing people. They were a big, outlaws in the United States. And so the whole story is that no one could ever catch Jesse James. Not true. There is actual proof that my husband's second great grandfather was able to throw him in jail for, I think, one night.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yes,
You'll
one night.
take
That's
that.
all he could hold him for. Yes. So, yeah, like I said, I was interviewed on Extreme Genes, the podcast for that one, because they were just blown away by that. And I actually had to talk to another historian who didn't believe my story at first because that was in his area that he knows all about. He's like, well, no, that's not true. It's like, oh, yes, it is true. He's like, no, it's just folklore. I showed him all the sources and he's like, oh, well, okay, I guess it is true. So,
Well, I mean, you laid it out for him
yeah,
or her.
it was him. Yeah, it was a him.
Okay, you laid it out for him.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing, and he's a bit he's a bit wiser in that section now that he kind of oh well, this is true.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
the main thing.
Yes. So yeah, like I said, I could go on forever, but those are the main stories right now that I've got that are just some exciting finds.
The Jesse James will sound really interesting. I will do my best to try and remember to link that because obviously the people now who are watching, you obviously don't see
Yeah.
that in the description now, but I will edit it later to try and include that episode.
Okay, yeah.
What type of record do you like most and why?
Oh gosh, I think the first record that I really like, and it's pretty basic, I guess, is the Census Records. That was the first record sets that I really started looking in the beginning, and they're really just the jumping off point for research and finding more information. And you wouldn't believe just the little nuggets of information that you can find hidden in these census records. So I think that's one reason why they're so much fun for me to look through. Like you can find if they owned a radio in like what was it, the 1930 census, and in the 1910 census, it asked how many children a woman had and how many were still living, and that could help you try to find other children that maybe passed away that was in between censuses.
Yeah.
And that helped out with me with my on my mom's side, my second great grandma. It's hard keeping track of all these. My second great grandma, Pauline Ilg, she had, I think it was 7 children, but only 4 lived to adulthood, and then 2 only got married and had kids, but the rest of the children, they were babies. They all passed away when they were infants. And I was able to find then their death certificates from the city because of, it's saying in the census record that, she had this many living, but this many had passed away. And it's like, oh my gosh, and there's no burial for some of them because they were buried in a poor area of a cemetery. And then the cemetery got sold and they redeveloped the land. And if you couldn't afford to move the remains of your family members, then they removed whoever they could and moved them to just random cemeteries. So yeah, you wouldn't been able to find any burial records after that for anything. So, but yeah, census records, they've been they've been really great. And then the next thing, it's not really a record set per se, but I love reading through old newspapers. I can just, I love getting on newspapers.com and just start reading the stories of our family, because it's like I guess you would say like Facebook is today, where there's so much information available, that gets published about everything. That's the way newspapers used to be. They would talk about any little detail. I found some articles about my mother-in-law when she was a little girl that said, oh yeah, her parents and they traveled to go see these people, and this one here, they went to this school and then they performed in this. I mean, it was just tons of information that you would never have found, except for these newspapers. And that's how I've learned more about a lot of people, and even history. When you're trying to understand the time of your ancestor, when I was researching William Ilg, my second great uncle, I didn't have a lot of information on him, but he died in World War I. So I was able to look at the newspapers from around that time and really get a sense of what his mom was going through, reading these articles, knowing her son is over there fighting, or even William looking in the newspaper, looking to see if his number had been called and he'd been drafted. And some of the, stuff they were talking about going on in the war, it really just kind of puts you in that time period and, paints a picture for you. So I love reading through the old newspapers.
Yeah. Oh, they're nice to look through too. Because I mean, going back to Catherine Fraher, who I was saying earlier, she died of TB in 1921.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to check that. At the age of 44, leaving behind her husband and four kids between the age range. The oldest was 19, so he wasn't too bad, but the youngest was my grandmother, and she was 5. So I mean, she lost her mother fairly early on, and there's like one photo of, there are very few photos of Caught, as she's known. Caught is the Irish for Kate. And there was this one photo of kind of like, Caught just kind of looking at my grandmother, and just my grandmother having an absolute just moody look and pout on her face. And that is so cute. And so kind of when I looked, it was a cousin of mine had sent me kind of this obituary, and it actually kind of, gave me a bit of an insight into kind of her life, and it was nice, and kind of it was kind of like the well-respected Mrs. C. Whelan, of Abbeyside, Dungarvan, and it was just kind of reading a bit about her, because obviously I wouldn't have met her, and obviously not a hope, unless there's some like mystical Doctor Who fella,
I know, right?
tuning in or something, but no, it was just kind of, it was nice kind of reading about her, because like not much info had ever been passed down, because
exactly,
sadly enough, with Tosh dying in 1941, there was actually the death of a child, and she died in 1947. So 6 years after my great grandmother died, her daughter Mary, who also people hardly know anything about.
Yeah.
My nan would have been 11, so
Oh,
kind
wow.
of before she even reached teenagerhood.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
lost her mother and her sister,
Oh,
both from TB.
yeah.
So I mean, it's hard, and I mean, like in that family, the oldest child lived till 64. The youngest
Hmm.
was that that daughter Mary at the
Hmm.
age of 22.
Yeah.
So like they they didn't really live long, sadly,
No. Yeah.
and it's just not much info was ever passed down. And actually, the oldest living cousin of mine, on kind of another child of another sibling of Mary, they don't actually know when Mary was born.
Oh, wow.
I found, and like this is only my grandaunt. It's not
Yeah.
like great 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 grandaunt.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
It's
very far
quite
back.
close.
Yeah.
She was sometime in like September, October 1920.
Yeah.
Like whenever I think it's 2026, because obviously 100 years
Hmm.
on the Genealogy site in Ireland, which is a godsend. um, so kind of when 2026 comes around, I'll be able to find out when she was actually born. So either that or
Oh, wonderful.
I can just pay like €4 to get the search now, but I can wait. Patience is a virtue, as they say.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So regarding newspapers, Nina also said chronicling America at the Library of Congress site is great too.
That's a good one
And
too. Yes.
yeah, that's ringing a bell, but I can't think about it off my head.
Mm.
It'll hit me, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So what does genealogy mean to you?
Oh gosh. Well, it's it's meant something different to me, now than it has, back before I even got into genealogy. When I first started hearing about people researching their family history, I was like, I really don't care to know much about my family. I felt very disconnected from my family. So I was just like, not a big deal. But when I really started researching and learning more about the people in my life, especially the women, I really did start finding a connection that I come from a very long line of strong women. And it really did bring about a connection that I never expected to find. And so it helped me grow as a person and who I am, and know that, my struggles, I'm not alone in this. A lot of my family went through a lot of problems and a lot of things, like I was talking about with, my third great grandma, and then my second great grandma being adopted, and then her daughter running off and getting pregnant before marriage. And then my grandma, she had it rough too, married, the first husband was not a very good man. And so then she married my grandpa, who was a much better man to her. But, just learning about their lives, it meant something, you know, to me to research and find out more about their lives, and then bringing their stories to life, bringing, their lives and giving it a voice, because otherwise nobody would know who these people are. Like I wrote a 5-part blog series on my second great grandma, Pauline Ilg, because nobody knew about her. Nobody knew about her life. Nobody knew about her struggles from the time she came over from Germany and losing all the babies that she did, and then 2 other children in their adult years, one of them in World War I, and living her life partially blind, partially deaf, and losing her husband when he was, still pretty young, and she had 4 children, I should say, to take care of. One of them was an infant that wasn't even born yet,
Mm.
and she was destitute and had to try to live and take care of the 4 children all on her own. Nobody would have known about her life. So my research really is bringing a voice to these, these stories. And that's, to me, that's important. And that's really what it means.
Yeah. No, I really do agree. And obviously some people might find it difficult to like write about their ancestors, or might find, like just find it difficult to write about, their own family history. And if there's anyone watching that is interested in trying to get better at it, two people I know who are good at it: Amy Johnson Crow, for those of you who
Yes.
might know, the 52 Ancestors Challenge, which I am not great at because I only did I only did like 3 of the prompts like last year because like school just went.
Yeah.
And obviously Natalie Pizzers, or
Yes.
Genealogy Stories, as she's also known as, doing the Curious Descendants Club. I think I got that right. But she's also a great place to kind of, find more out about kind of how to write about your ancestors' stories if you are interested about that side, and not just like a data smith, as I like to call them.
Yes.
Although I will admit I'm a bit of one. I'm not great at telling stories. Anyway, so what advice would you give to a young person starting out?
Oh, let's see. I would say the first thing, obviously, is talk to the family that you can now, because they're not going to always be there. It's like the one thing I'm kicking myself on is my great great aunt Auntie, which is part of Auntie Jen. I used to call her Auntie all the time, and I never understood the concept that she was my grandma's aunt as a kid. It's like, well, they look the same age. How can she be her aunt? As a kid, you don't understand those concepts. But she, had so much history that she could have told me. And I knew her up until the time I think I was about 12 years old. That's when she passed away. But she was raised by my grandma, Maggie Helfrich, who adopted Oma. And that's, my auntie was Oma's daughter. So she could have possibly told me some more stories. Now, I don't think she knew about the adoption. I don't think she knew anything about, any of that stuff. But just the fact that that was a direct connection to the people that I'm struggling to research now, I am kicking myself, for not really being more interested in my family when I was younger. Like I said, she was around till I was 12, and I was very close to her. I loved her to death. I still have items of hers around the house, and I have photos with her, memories, tons of stuff, so I would definitely suggest people talking to their family while they're around. But I will give a warning and a disclaimer on that. Be prepared, because some families may not want to talk, and you're going to have to be okay with that. Because I've got family that does not want to talk about their past because it was very rough. They've got things that they would rather forget in their lives. And, one thing was, with my mom, I researching, her life and everything, I started bringing up memories, from when she was a child, and then same with my uncles, and even my grandma. She'd look at some of the photos, and I'd start talking about some of the stuff. She'd start getting some memories. She'd close the photo album and push it away. And she's like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to think about it anymore. So I know that there were things that happened. And so I would just give a word of caution to someone who's maybe enthusiastic about learning about their family. Be prepared. There may be some things you may never find answers to, and people may not want to talk about them. And you're going to have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
So that's the best I can give.
Yeah, I'm. From what I know, there's not really that much in my family. Like they were just kind of like the traditional things. So like they were born, they married, they had kids, lived a long happy life, died. It just seems to be more. There's no kind of like little scandals in there. Not that I'm saying it was like any. But like,
I found skeletons. Believe me, I found skeletons.
Well, for me, I haven't found any, and I'm not sure if I will. So I don't know. Anywho, so with times change, and obviously for people who are new to this or new to these series that I'm doing, I actually, and for those who are also kind of have watched a number of these, you may have spotted that I forgot to ask you and Paley this last week, because on my sheet, which is all questions, you can kind of see that's my handwriting, and I actually started writing another one, which I actually didn't finish because typically I remember to ask it, but because I have been so out of this, I've forgotten it. So the question that I was going to ask Yona, and he only mentioned it to me afterwards, and I thought, no. So that wasn't fun. Forgetting that. So I will do my best to remember it now. With times are changing and more young people getting into genealogy, do you think there's a sufficient outlet for young genealogists to connect?
Well, I think there's more available now than there ever used to be. I still think there's not enough really to get people more interested when they're younger, and then to have those continued outlets, once they get that interest in. I've talked with the Historical Society, with maybe talking with some of the local schools and asking if maybe we can come in and do like a presentation with some of the kids to really try to get them interested in local history, their family history, researching, and start kind of whetting their appetite, for all of this, because it's more than just dates and names and everything. There's stories, there's many different aspects to family history, genealogy, and history in general. And we really need to start getting, kids more interested in this, because like me, there was nothing, that I like I said, I hated history, but there was only one teacher that made me more interested in history because he loved history. He projected that in his class. He would get very animated and talk and act out things. And I remember more from his class than I do any other history class I've ever taken, because he had such a love for it that it transposed onto us, and I think that needs to happen more. And they do. They need to have more programs available, more things, like you said, you're wanting to do that one class, but it's 21 and older. And it's like, why does it have to wait until, you're that old? Why can't it start when you're younger?
Well, I think there's actually some criteria or something that you actually have to have an undergrad or
Well,
something to do it. But
well,
yeah,
I get that.
anyway.
You know what I'm saying, though. I just wish that, that there would be more, for people to really get them involved,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So, so I forgot to say to people, if you actually had any questions that you wanted to ask Jen, please get them in now, as I'm asking the last two. I did great at remembering that, didn't I?
Oh, that's all right. We're having fun.
So, and one comment from Rob H.E. So I've been looking into where my ancestors lived and what they owned, like houses and land, and if the houses are still standing, to find old photos of the houses. In some, I can go back to 1700.
Yeah.
Part 2. Is this something others are interested in?
Actually, yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, there was actually, because I did a trip up to where my ancestors on my father's side were actually from, in Mayo, in a place called Bahola, and kind of we were going home, and we actually went past kind of a road, and there's this old, like, it looks like a barn, but it kind of, my dad actually kind of said to me, that's my mum's old school. And that it's actually the remnant. It looks like a barn. Like you would have thought it was like a barn. So like where cattle would have been put, and probably is now, but kind of that was actually kind of where my nana actually used to go to school. And she wasn't too far from the school. She was kind of in the kind of many fields around the place. So she's in one of the houses there. I have actually found where she used to live, kind of when she was born. So she was born in 1923. So kind of you can actually see it on Google Maps where she was actually lived, and it is actually just bricks now. It's like there's nothing there near enough. It's just, and another where a granduncle of mine used to live, kind of his house is obviously, it's a modern-ish looking house for its time, but obviously it hasn't had anyone in it for at least 30 years. So it's abandoned, and obviously actually next to it where cattle again because obviously my whole family were practically farmers on my father's side.
Yeah.
Like they had what actually were barns. There was actually one building that was actually the house of
Hmm.
like my kind of great grandfather. And
Hmm.
granted, he had probably about 7 or 8 kids, and it was not a big house.
No,
So
no.
you would
Yeah.
have just kind of gone like, ah, so many kids. But
Oh
then
yeah.
again,
Well, it's like my dad actually and his siblings. He's the oldest of 9 kids, and the last house that they had settled in with all of the kids was literally a barn. It was literally a barn. That's the barn unfortunately is not standing anymore, but we've got pictures of it. But the living area was downstairs with the kitchen and the I guess eating area, living area, and such. And they had a coal furnace. And then you take the ladder upstairs to the upper level, and that's where all the beds were, separated by curtains. And so, yeah,
well, I
I
mean,
actually recorded my dad talking about the barn on the property because my uncle Marty owns the property now where the barn used to be, because that's where their house is. But before he passed, I took him and some of the siblings out there and started asking them questions and started filming them talking about how it was set up, what, this was the door over here, and this is where we sat here, and this is where we swung from the rafters over here. So they would start telling stories. But yeah, when they say we lived in a barn, they legitimately lived in
yeah,
a barn.
yeah,
But yeah, people, they're very interested. A lot of people are still interested in old buildings and the land that their family owned, and even not so much their family. When I was at the historical society a couple weeks ago, we had a couple come in because they were curious about a structure that was on their property that they didn't know what the history was behind it. And obviously it was old. So they came in looking for the history of the land, who owned it before, so we can maybe put, some dates to when this building was built, who owned it, what was the purpose of it. So yeah, people are still very interested in learning about the old buildings there that are around. And there's still, there's a lot of documents you can look at from land property records and old maps and such like that. So,
yeah. I mean, it is interesting from multiple angles, kind of
yes,
whatever way you look into it. So,
yes.
I think without further ado, and it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in, so I think this would be a good time to end. So, thank you
Okay.
so much, Jen, for coming on and chatting.
Thank you
It's
for having me.
lovely having you, and we've been entertaining the 8 people. Yeah, that's it. 8 people who have joined in to watch. So thank you to everyone who watched. And if you like the video, don't want to sound like every like normal YouTuber kind of thing, like and subscribe. But I'll leave that up to you. I'll leave that up to you. So thanks everyone for popping in, and stay tuned for my next interviewee, which I hope to actually release a little quicker than I did this one. So see you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.